The escape pod fell from the stars like a dying comet. It crashed into the rocky ground of Korath Prime with a sound that echoed across the empty mountains. Smoke rose from the twisted metal as the morning sun cast long shadows over the crash site. Terran felt the impact from his cave, high in the mountain peaks. The ancient dragon had lived on this world for 300 years. He knew every sound the planet made. This was different. This was not natural. The dragon stretched his massive wings and flew toward the crash. His scales were deep blue like the ocean depths. His eyes burned gold like ancient stars. Terran was old even by dragon standards. He had seen empires rise and fall across the galaxy. The escape pod was small and badly damaged. Human technology. Terran knew it well. He had fought alongside humans in the old wars before the Galactic Council turned against all the elder species. Before they declared dragons and other ancient races to be threats that must be eliminated. Steam hissed from the broken pod as Terran landed nearby. His claws scraped against stone as he approached carefully. Inside the wreckage, he could hear something moving, something alive but weak. The dragon used one claw to tear open the pod's door. The metal screamed as it bent. Inside was a human woman with dark hair and pale skin. Blood covered her face and clothes. She was dying. Terran could smell death on her, but she was not alone. In her arms was a tiny human infant, a baby boy with black hair and closed eyes. The child was breathing. He was alive and unharmed despite the crash. The woman's eyes opened when she saw Terran's massive head looking down at her. Most humans would scream at the sight of a dragon. This one did not. She looked at him with desperate hope. "Please," she whispered in a voice so quiet Terran had to lean closer to hear. "Save him. His name is Do-hyun. He is all I have left." Terran stared at the dying woman and her child. Dragons did not care for human young. Dragons barely cared for their own young anymore. There were so few dragons left in the galaxy. The Council's hunter fleets had killed most of them. But something about this moment reminded Terran of his own loss. Centuries ago, he had young dragons of his own. The hunters had found his nest on a distant world. They killed his mate and his children while Terran was away. When he returned, he found only ashes and bones. The woman's breathing became weaker. "Please," she said again. "He has no one else. The Council destroyed our colony. We were the only ones who escaped." Terran had heard this story many times. The Galactic Council called it progress. They said they were bringing order to the galaxy, but Terran knew the truth. They were destroyers. They feared anything they could not control. Ancient species like dragons were too powerful to be allowed to live freely. "What was your colony's name?" Terran asked in the human language he had learned long ago. "New Soul," the woman replied. "We were farmers. We never hurt anyone. But they said we were in restricted space. They gave us 3 days to leave. When we refused, they came with warships." The baby in her arms made a soft sound. Not crying, but almost like he was trying to speak. The woman looked down at him with love and sadness. "His father died protecting the transport ships," she continued. "I took the last escape pod. I was trying to reach the outer systems where there might be other human colonies. But the pod was damaged. The navigation system failed." Terran understood. The woman had been flying blind through space hoping to find safety for her child. Instead, she had crash-landed on a world that was supposed to be empty. A world where an old dragon lived in hiding from the same hunters who had destroyed her home. "I know what you are," the woman said, looking into Terran's golden eyes. "I know the Council says your kind are monsters, but I have read the old histories. Before the Council came to power, dragons and humans sometimes fought together. Some dragons even protected human worlds." That was true. In the ancient days before the Council's rise to power, the galaxy was different. Species worked together sometimes. Dragons had been allies to several human colonies. Some dragons had even died defending human worlds from raiders and pirates. But those days were long gone. Now dragons were hunted wherever they were found. Now humans served the Council's war machine or were enslaved on factory worlds. The woman's hand moved to touch her son's face. I cannot give him much, but I can give him to someone strong enough to protect him. Someone the hunters will never expect. Terran felt something stirring in his chest, an emotion he had not felt in centuries. It might have been pity, or it might have been recognition of a kindred spirit. This human woman was like him. She was the last of her kind trying to save what mattered most. The Council's hunter fleets patrol these systems, Terran warned. If they find a dragon caring for a human child, they will kill us both. Then do not let them find you, the woman replied. Her voice was getting weaker, but her eyes remained focused on his. You have survived this long. You know how to hide. He can learn. The baby opened his eyes for the first time since Terran had found him. They were dark brown like his mother's. He looked up at the dragon without fear. Most human infants would cry at the sight of such a massive creature. This one just watched quietly, as if he understood that his fate was being decided. The woman's breathing stopped. Terran sat in the silence that followed. The morning wind blew through the crash site, carrying the scent of scorched metal and cooling engines. Soon the Council's patrol drones would detect the crash. They would come to investigate. They would find the wreckage and the woman's body, but they would not find the child. Terran reached down with one massive claw and carefully lifted the baby from his dead mother's arms. The infant was so small and fragile. Dragons were not built for caring for such tiny creatures. But Terran would learn. He flew back to his mountain cave carrying the child, who would grow up to shake the foundations of the galaxy itself. Behind them, the escape pod continued to smoke in the morning sun. Soon it would be nothing but twisted metal and fading memories. But the life it had carried would endure. The dragon and the human child disappeared into the peaks of Korath Prime. The first chapter of a legend was beginning. 15 years passed like seasons on Korath Prime. The baby who had crashed from the stars grew into a young man under the watchful eyes of an ancient dragon. Do-Yun was no longer the helpless infant Terran had saved from the wreckage. He stood, tall and strong with muscles built from years of climbing mountain peaks and training in the dragon's ways. His black hair was long, and his dark eyes held wisdom far beyond his human years. The cave that had once seemed impossibly large to a small child now felt like home. Terran had carved out chambers deep in the mountain where they could live safely. One chamber held salvaged equipment from the crashed escape pod. Another contained books and data crystals that Terran had collected over centuries of travel across the galaxy. Every morning, Do-Hyun practiced combat with weapons made from mountain stone and salvaged metal. Terran watched from above as the young man moved through forms the dragon had taught him. Human fighting styles mixed with dragon tactics created something new and deadly. Your balance is still too forward, Terran called down from his perch on a high ledge. Remember what I taught you about patience. Strike when your enemy expects defense. Defend when they expect attack. Do-Hyun nodded and adjusted his stance. The training sword in his hands felt as natural as breathing now. But Terran had taught him that weapons were only tools. The real weapon was the mind. After combat practice came lessons in language. Do-Hyun spoke Korean fluently. The language came from the databanks in his mother's escape pod, but he also spoke the ancient dragon tongue that few beings in the galaxy remembered. When he spoke in dragon language, his voice carried harmonics that made the mountain caves ring like bells. Tell me again about the old times, Do-Hyun said, as they sat by the fire that evening. Before the council ruled everything. Terran's golden eyes reflected the flames as he began another story. Long ago, the galaxy was different. There were thousands of species, and they often traded and worked together. Dragons flew between the stars carrying messages and protecting trade routes. Humans built colonies on 1,000,000 worlds and shared their knowledge freely. What changed? Do-hyun asked, though. He had heard this story many times before. Fear, Terran replied simply. The younger species grew afraid of the older ones. They formed the Galactic Council and said they wanted peace and order. But what they really wanted was control. They could not control dragons or the other elder species, so they decided we must all die. Do-hyun stared into the fire and thought about the mother he had never really known. She had died trying to save him from the Council's violence. How many other children had lost their families the same way? The Council tells everyone that we elder species are dangerous monsters, Terran continued. They say we eat children and destroy worlds for sport. Some humans believe these lies because they make the Council's actions seem justified. But you saved me, Do-hyun said. You could have let me die with my mother, but you chose to raise me instead. Yes, Terran agreed. And that choice has given my life meaning again. You are proof that the Council's propaganda is false. Dragons and humans can coexist. We can even care for each other. Far above their mountain home, the stars shone down on Korath Prime. But among those stars moved ships with darker purposes. Captain Ji-won of the Hunter Division studied star charts in her command center aboard the warship Stellar Hammer. She had spent 5 years tracking energy signatures across this sector of space. Ancient dragons gave off a specific type of radiation when they used their powers. Her sensors had detected traces of that energy near Korath Prime. Lieutenant Minho, she called to her second-in-command. What do we know about the Korath system? Minho checked his datapad quickly. Officially uninhabited, Captain, no colonies or stations. The planets are mostly rock and ice. Nothing valuable enough to justify settlement. Perfect place for an elder to hide, Ji-won said with satisfaction. Send probe drones to scan the system. Full spectrum analysis. I want to know if there's so much as a cave rat living on those worlds. Captain Ji-won had built her reputation on hunting down elder species. 3 dragons and 2 ancient energy beings had died by her hand. Each kill had brought promotion and recognition from the Council's high command. Finding another dragon would make her career complete. Back on Korath Prime, Terran felt a familiar uneasiness. His connection to the cosmic forces that dragons commanded told him something was coming. Danger approached like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Do-hyun, he called. Come here. It is time for your final lesson. The young man looked up from the book he was reading about galactic history. What kind of lesson? The lesson every child must learn before becoming an adult, Terran replied seriously. The lesson of choice. They walked together to the highest chamber in their mountain home. From here they could see the entire valley spread out below and the stars beyond. Terran had never brought Do-hyun to this place before. This chamber holds my greatest treasures, the dragon explained. Along the walls were crystal formations that glowed with inner light. Each crystal contained memories and knowledge from Terran's long life. If something happens to me, these crystals will teach you things I have not had time to show you. Nothing is going to happen to you, Do-hyun said, but his voice carried doubt. I have lived for over 1,000 years, Terran replied gently. I have escaped the hunters many times. But I am old, and they are getting better at finding us. The day may come soon when you must decide your own path. My path is with you, Do-hyun said firmly. Perhaps, Terran agreed. Or perhaps your path will lead somewhere I cannot follow. You are human Do-hyun. You have gifts and possibilities that dragons do not possess. Never forget that. Above them, in the cold vacuum of space probe drones, silently entered the Korath system. Their sensors began scanning for signs of life, while their transmitters prepared to send data back to Captain Jiwan's fleet. The peaceful years were ending. Soon the hunters would come, and everything would change forever. The probe drones found what Captain Jiwan was looking for. Deep scan analysis showed energy patterns that could only come from an elder species. The readings were strongest near a mountain range on the third planet. Thermal imaging revealed cave systems that showed signs of long-term habitation. There, Captain Jiwan pointed at the display screen in her command center. Our dragon is hiding in those mountains. Lieutenant Minho studied the data carefully. The energy readings are very strong, Captain. This could be an old and powerful dragon. Maybe we should request additional ships before we attack. Nonsense, Jiwan replied with confidence. We have a full battle group, 12 frigates, 6 destroyers, and this dreadnought. No single dragon can stand against firepower like that. She turned to address her bridge crew. All ships prepare. For assault formation, we go in fast and hard. I want that mountain range surrounded before the target knows we are here. On Korath Prime, Terran felt the approaching danger like ice in his veins. The cosmic forces that dragons were connected to screamed warnings across space. Ships were coming. Many ships with weapons designed to kill his kind. Do-hyun, he called urgently. They have found us. The young man looked up from his morning exercises. In the 15 years they had lived together, he had never seen such worry in Terran's golden eyes. The hunters? Do-hyun asked. Yes, a full fleet by the feel of it. They will be here within hours. Do-hyun's hand moved instinctively to the practice sword at his side. Then we fight. No, Terran said firmly. You run. I have prepared an escape route through the deep caves. It leads to the far side of the mountain range. From there you can reach the old mining station and find a ship. I will not abandon you, Do-hyun replied with steel in his voice. Terran looked at the human he had raised from infancy. Do-hyun was no longer a child who needed protection. He was a young warrior who had learned everything the ancient dragon could teach him. But he was still just one human against a fleet of warships. This is not your fight, Terran said gently. You are my father in everything but blood, Do-hyun replied. Your enemies are my enemies. Your fight is my fight. Before Terran could argue further, the first ships appeared in the sky above their mountain. Sleek military vessels dropped from orbit in attack formation. Their weapons were already charging as they surrounded the peaks. Captain Jiwan's voice echoed from speakers on the lead destroyer. Dragon of Korath Prime, you are surrounded by ships of the Galactic Council Hunter Division. Surrender now, and your death will be quick. Terran laughed. The sound rumbled through the mountain like an earthquake. I am Terran the Star Walker. I have burned worlds and shattered moons. Do you think your little ships frighten me? Then you choose to die fighting, Jiwan replied. So be it. All ships open fire. The mountain exploded in light and thunder. Energy beams and missiles struck the peaks where Terran made his home. Rock and metal vaporized in the intense heat. The sound was like the birth of stars, but when the smoke cleared, Terran still lived. The ancient dragon burst from his mountain cave with wings spread wide. His scales reflected the weapon fire like mirrors. His eyes burned brighter than the ship's engines. This was a dragon in his full power and fury. Stellar fire poured from Terran's mouth in a stream that could melt starship hulls. The nearest. Frigate tried to dodge, but dragonfire moves faster than thought. The ship's shields collapsed, and its armor began to glow red-hot. Evasive maneuvers, Captain Jiwan ordered from her command center. Do not let it lock on to you. But Terran had been fighting in space longer than these humans had been alive. He knew how ships moved and where their weak points were. His claws extended and gravity bent around them like invisible weapons. 2 destroyers were crushed like tin cans as the dragon's power pulled them together. From inside the mountain cave, Do-hyun watched the battle through the scope of a salvaged rifle. His adoptive father was magnificent in combat, but there were too many enemies. For every ship Terran destroyed, 2 more took its place. The young man made his choice. Do-hyun ran through the cave tunnels to where Terran kept his emergency supplies. Jury-rigged weapons and armor that the dragon had built over the years, equipment designed to help them survive if they were ever discovered. He strapped on a powered suit that boosted his human strength. He took plasma grenades and an energy rifle that could punch through ship armor. Most importantly, he took the communicator that could interface with Council ship systems. While Terran battled the main fleet above, Do-hyun slipped out through the back tunnels. He used climbing skills learned over 15 years to scale the mountain peaks behind their home. From there, he could see the entire battle spread across the sky. 3 ships were coming around the mountain to attack Terran from behind while he fought the main group. Do-hyun raised his rifle and targeted their engines. The range was extreme for a ground-based weapon, but the young man had learned to shoot from the best teacher in the galaxy. His first shot took out a frigate's main engine. The ship spun out of control and crashed into the mountainside. His second shot damaged a destroyer's weapon systems. The third shot missed, but got the enemy's attention. "We have ground forces," came a voice over the communication channels. "Repeat, we have hostile ground forces supporting the dragon." Captain Ji-won could not believe what she was hearing. "What ground forces? The planet is supposed to be uninhabited." "Unknown. Captain, someone is shooting at us with military-grade weapons." Do-hyun smiled as he moved to a new firing position. Let them wonder who was helping the dragon. Let them fear there were more enemies than they expected. But his interference could only do so much. Terran was tiring from the constant battle. Dragon fire that had burned like stars now flickered and weakened. The ancient creature had used more power in this fight than he had in centuries. A lucky missile strike caught Terran in the shoulder. Dragon blood that shone like liquid starlight fell toward the mountain below. The great wings faltered, and for a moment it seemed the dragon might fall. "Now," Captain Ji-won ordered. "Hit him with everything we have." 20 ships fired at once. The sky filled with energy beams and explosions. When the light faded, Terran hung in the air, barely conscious. His magnificent scales were cracked and burning. His golden eyes were dim with pain and exhaustion. The dragon looked down at the mountain, where he had raised a human child for 15 years, where he had found purpose and meaning after centuries of emptiness. His home was burning. His son was in danger. But Terran had one more gift to give. The ancient dragon gathered the last of his power and spoke in the old language that shaped reality itself, words that carried his essence and everything he had learned across 1,000 years of life. Words meant for the human who had become his greatest treasure. Do-hyun felt something flowing into his mind and heart. Knowledge and strength and love beyond measure. The final gift from a father to his son. Then Terran the star. Walker fell from the sky and the mountain shook with his landing. The mountain was silent except for the crackling of fires and the settling of broken stone. Terran lay at the bottom of a crater his fall had created. His great chest rose and fell slowly as dragon blood pooled beneath him. Do-hyun ran down the mountain paths faster than he had ever moved before. Tears blurred his vision, but he did not slow down. Behind him, he could hear the hunter ships landing and troops moving through the burning caves. He reached Terran just as the dragon's golden eyes opened one last time. The ancient creature tried to lift his massive head, but the effort was too great. "My son," Terran whispered in the dragon tongue. "Did you feel it? The gift I gave you?" Do-hyun knelt beside the only father he had ever known. "I felt it, but I do not understand what it means." "You will," Terran replied. "When the time comes, you will know. The power of dragons flows in your human blood now. Use it wisely." "Do not leave me," Do-hyun pleaded. "I still have so much to learn from you." Terran's eyes grew softer. "You have learned all I can teach. The rest you must discover for yourself. Remember what I told you about choice. Your path will not be the same as mine." The sound of approaching boots echoed through the crater. Council troops were closing in with their weapons ready. "Go," Terran urged. "Live. Make my sacrifice mean something." "I will make them pay for this," Do-yun promised with rage burning in his voice. "No," the dragon said firmly despite his weakness. "Do not become like them. Protect those who need protection. That is the dragon way. That is what I taught you." The light began to fade from Terran's golden eyes. "I am proud of you, my son. Proud of the man you have become." Then the great dragon was still. Do-yun felt something break inside his chest, a pain worse than any physical wound. The being who had saved him and raised him and loved him was gone. Forever. "There he is!" shouted a voice behind him. The ground forces were just one human. Do-hyun turned to see a squad of council soldiers approaching with weapons trained on him. Their armor bore the symbols of the Hunter Division. These were the same people who had destroyed his birth mother's colony and now killed his adoptive father. The young man stood slowly with his hands empty at his sides. The rage and grief inside him wanted to grab a weapon and fight until they killed him too. But Terran's final words echoed in his memory. "Do not become like them." "I surrender," Do-yun said quietly. The squad leader looked surprised. "You are human. What were you doing helping that monster?" "That monster was my father," Do-hyun replied with steel in his voice. Captain Ji-won arrived with more troops as they secured the crash site. She studied the young human with keen interest. He was clearly not a standard colonist. His equipment was too advanced and his fighting skills too professional. "What is your name?" she asked. "Do-hyun." "Where are you from, Do-hyun? What colony?" "New, Seoul," he answered truthfully. "Before you destroyed it." Ji-won's eyebrows rose. The New Seoul incident had been over 15 years ago. This human would have been just a baby then. Impossible. There were no survivors from that operation. "One escape pod got away," Do-yun explained. "My mother brought me here before she died. The dragon found me and raised me." The captain walked in a circle around her prisoner as she thought. This was unprecedented. A human child raised by an elder species. The council's xenobiologists would be fascinated. The propaganda department could use this story to show how the council had saved a human from monster influence. "Sergeant Hee-bin," Ji-won called to one of her subordinates. "Prepare a holding cell on the ship. Our prisoner will be coming with us." Sergeant Hee-bin was a woman in her 30s with short black hair and intelligent eyes. She had joined the military to protect human colonies from alien threats. But something about this situation felt wrong to her. "Captain," she said carefully, "the prisoner does not seem hostile. Maybe we should consider releasing him to a civilian colony." "Absolutely not," Ji-won replied sharply. "This human has been contaminated by prolonged exposure to an elder species. He needs to be studied and rehabilitated. The council's scientists will want to examine him thoroughly." As they led him toward the transport ships, Do-yun looked back one more time at Terran's body. The dragon looked smaller in death, less magnificent, but the lessons he had taught would live on in the human he had raised. The journey to Council. Space took 3 weeks aboard the dreadnought Stellar Hammer. Do-yun was kept in a small holding cell with basic amenities. Guards watched him constantly, but he gave them no trouble. Sergeant Hee-bin brought him meals twice a day. Unlike the other soldiers, she treated him with basic courtesy instead of suspicion. "You really grew up with that dragon?" she asked during one of her visits. "His name was Terran," Do-hyun replied. "And yes, he found me as a baby and raised me as his own son. The council says dragons are monsters who eat human children. Terran never hurt anyone who did not attack him first. He spent 15 years teaching me about honor and justice and protecting those who cannot protect themselves." Hee-bin studied the young man's face. He spoke with quiet conviction, not the wild ravings of someone driven mad by alien influence. What did he teach you exactly? Combat skills, history, languages, philosophy, how to think strategically, how to judge right from wrong. Do-hyun paused. He taught me that the strong should protect the weak, not exploit them. That sounds more like a father than a monster, Hyabin said quietly. He was both father and teacher to me, Do-hyun agreed. The only family I ever knew. As the days passed, strange things began happening aboard the Stellar Hammer. Minor system malfunctions that the engineers could not explain. Computer glitches that seemed to target specific files. Security cameras that briefly showed impossible images. Do-hyun noticed the changes but said nothing to his guards. Something was awakening inside him. The gift Terran had given him in his final moments was growing stronger. During his third week in captivity, Do-hyun discovered he could understand the ship's computer systems without using a terminal. He could sense the flow of data through the networks. He could feel the electronic patterns that controlled everything from life support to weapons. This was not normal human ability. Captain Ji-won received a priority message from Council headquarters during the final day of their journey. She read it twice to make sure she understood correctly. "Change of plans," she announced to her senior officers. "We are not taking the prisoner directly to the research facility. First, we make a stop at Kepler Station." Lieutenant Minho looked confused. "Kepler Station, Captain? That is just a refugee processing center." "Not anymore," Ji-won replied with a cold smile. "Intelligence reports indicate that Kepler Station has become a gathering point for dissidents and separatists. The Council has decided it represents a security threat." "What are our orders regarding the station?" "Complete pacification. The Captain answered. "We are to eliminate all personnel and facilities. The official report will state that the refugees were infected with an alien parasite that threatened public health." Sergeant Hyabin felt sick to her stomach. She had heard these orders before. Complete pacification was Council code for genocide. They were going to murder thousands of innocent people. In his holding cell, Do-hyun felt something else awakening. Not just the dragon gift, but his own human instincts. Terran had taught him to protect those who could not protect themselves. Soon, he would have a chance to honor that lesson. Kepler Station appeared on the main screen like a metal flower floating in space. The old mining platform had been converted into a refugee center years ago. Thousands of people from dozens of worlds lived there in cramped but peaceful conditions. Do-hyun watched through the small window of his holding cell as the Stellar Hammer approached the station. He could see civilian ships docked at the outer rings, cargo vessels and passenger transports that belonged to families seeking new homes after their worlds were destroyed. "Beautiful sight, is it not?" Captain Ji-won said as she entered his cell. Two guards flanked her with weapons ready. "Those are innocent people," Do-hyun replied. "Innocent?" Ji-won laughed coldly. "They are criminals and dissidents, separatists who reject the Council's authority. They spread lies about our peacekeeping operations. They are refugees, people whose homes you destroyed. Their homes were destroyed because they harbored enemies of galactic peace," the captain corrected. "Just as you were harbored by that dragon monster." Do-hyun felt something stirring in his chest. A warmth that had been growing stronger each day since Terran's death. The dragon's final gift was awakening fully. "What will you do to them?" he asked, though he already feared the answer. "We will cleanse them," Ji-won replied matter-of-factly. "The station will be sterilized and converted to proper use. The galaxy will be safer." "You mean murder? You plan to murder thousands of people?" The captain's eyes grew hard. "I plan to follow my orders, something a dragon-raised savage would not understand." After she left, Do-hyun sat alone and tried to process what he had learned. Somewhere on that station were human families with children, maybe even babies like he had once been. All of them would die unless someone stopped the Council fleet. But what could one prisoner do against an entire battle group? The answer came from Terran's memories now flowing through his mind. Dragons did not win through brute force alone. They won through intelligence and understanding their enemy's weaknesses. Do-Yun closed his eyes and extended his consciousness toward the ship's computer networks. The sensation was like diving into an ocean of information. Data flowed around him in patterns he instinctively understood. The Stellar Hammer's systems were incredibly complex, but they followed logical rules. Power flowed from the main reactors to essential systems. Communications linked all the ships in the fleet. Weapon controls connected to targeting computers. Everything was connected. Everything could be influenced by someone who understood the patterns. Sergeant Hyeben made her scheduled rounds through the detention level. She had been thinking constantly about her conversation with the prisoner. His words about protecting the weak echoed in her mind. When she reached Do-Yun's cell, she found him sitting in meditation pose with his eyes closed. But something was different. The air around him seemed to shimmer like heat waves. "Are you all right?" she asked through the door speaker. Do-Yun opened his eyes and looked directly at her. "Sergeant Hyeben, you know what they plan to do to the refugees." It was not a question. Somehow he knew about the mission details. "How do you know about that?" she whispered. "The same way I know you joined the military to protect people, not murder them," Do-Hyun replied. "The same way I know you have been questioning your orders lately." Hyben looked around nervously. This conversation could get her court-martialed. "I follow orders. That is what soldiers do. Even when those orders are wrong? Even when they go against everything you believe in?" "What choice do I have?" she asked desperately. "If I refuse, they will just replace me with someone who will follow orders without question." "There is always a choice," Do-Hyun said gently. "My father taught me that. Even when all the options seem bad, we can still choose which kind of person we want to be." Something in his voice made Hyeben look at him more closely. His eyes held depths that seemed older than his years. "What are you?" "I am someone who was taught to protect those who cannot protect themselves," he replied. "And right now, thousands of innocent people need protection." "From an entire battle fleet? What can one person do against that kind of firepower?" Do-Hyun smiled. "Let me show you." The lights in the detention level flickered. Then every security door in the section opened at once with soft clicking sounds. Hyeben stepped back in shock. "How did you do that?" "Terran gave me something before he died," Do-Hyun explained as he walked out of his cell. "Part of his essence. Part of his knowledge. Dragons understand the deep patterns that connect all things." Warning alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red. Over the communication system came urgent voices reporting system failures across multiple decks. "Attention all personnel," Captain Ji-won's voice echoed from speakers. "We have a security breach. All guards report to stations immediately." Do-Yun walked calmly through the chaotic corridors as crew members ran past him. None of them paid attention to one more person in basic clothes. They were too focused on the technical emergencies happening all around them. In the main computer core, he placed his hand on a data terminal. Information flowed through him like water through a sponge. Ship layouts, crew assignments, weapon specifications, communication protocols, everything he needed to understand his enemy. "There you are," Sergeant Hyeben said as she found him in the computer center. She had followed him through the ship instead of reporting his escape. "The whole ship is looking for you." "I know," Do-Yun replied without taking his hand off the terminal. "They will not find me until I want them to." "What are you doing?" "Learning," he said simply. "Dragons live for centuries. They have time to study their enemies carefully before acting. I have to learn faster." Through the ship's sensors, Do-Hyun could see Kepler Station growing larger as they approached. Civilian ships were beginning to undock as word spread that Council warships were coming. But there were too many people on the station. Most would never escape in time. The refugees are trying to run, Heben observed, watching the same displays. They cannot all get away, Do-hyun said with sadness. Too many ships. Too little time. Unless something delays the attack. What kind of delay could stop a whole battle fleet? Do-hyun removed his hand from the terminal and turned to face her. The kind that comes from inside. When the weapons do not fire because the targeting computers have been corrupted. When the engines fail because the power distribution network has been rerouted. When the communication system broadcasts the wrong orders to confused crews. You can do all that? I am learning how, he replied. But I will need help. Someone who knows military procedures. Someone the crew trusts. Heben understood what he was asking. You want me to help you sabotage our own ship. I want you to help me save innocent lives, Do-hyun corrected. The choice is yours, Sergeant, but choose quickly. In 1 hour, Captain Ji-won will give the order to fire on Kepler Station. Through the ship's hull, they could hear the subtle vibrations of weapons systems charging. The stellar hammer was preparing for battle against an enemy that could not fight back. Heben thought about the refugees on the station. Families with children who had already lost their homes once. They deserved a chance to live in peace. What do you need me to do? She asked. The bridge of the stellar hammer buzzed with activity as Captain Ji-won prepared for the assault on Kepler Station. Her officers worked at their stations while tactical displays showed the refugee ships trying desperately to escape. Weapons status. Report, she ordered. All batteries charged and ready, Captain, replied the weapons officer. Target locks acquired on the station's main structures. Communication arrays, standing by to broadcast the sterilization order to the refugee ships, answered the communications officer. Ji-won smiled coldly. Excellent. In 10 minutes we will rid the galaxy of another nest of dissidents and terrorists. Deep in the ship's computer core, Do-hyun worked frantically to understand systems he had never seen before. The dragon essence flowing through him helped him grasp concepts that should have taken years to learn. But time was running short. The weapon targeting computers are protected by multiple security layers, he explained to Sergeant Heben, who was helping him access restricted files. I can corrupt the data, but only for a few minutes before their engineers fix the problems. Will a few minutes be enough? She asked. It has to be, Do-hyun replied. The refugee ships need time to get clear of the station. Once they reach the outer system, the Council fleet will not chase them. Too many witnesses in the hyperspace shipping lanes. Through the ship's sensors, he could see the evacuation in progress. Cargo vessels packed with families. Passenger transports carrying more people than they were designed for. Everyone trying to escape before the shooting started, but there were still too many people on the station itself. 5 minutes to weapons. Free, came Captain Ji-won's voice over the communication system. Do-hyun placed both hands on the main computer terminal and let his consciousness dive deeper into the ship's electronic nervous system. This time he did not just read the data. He began to change it. Power distribution networks received new routing instructions. Weapon targeting systems found their databases corrupted with false information. Communication arrays started broadcasting the wrong signals to the wrong ships. Throughout the fleet, similar changes were happening as Do-hyun's influence spread through the connected networks. Dragons understood that everything in the universe was connected by invisible threads. Pull. The right threads and even mighty warships would stumble. Captain, the weapons officer reported with confusion in his voice. I am getting error messages from the main battery controls. What kind of errors? Ji-won demanded. Target acquisition failure. The computers cannot lock onto the station. On the tactical display, Kepler Station flickered and disappeared as the sensors lost track of it. Then it reappeared in the wrong position before vanishing again. Sensor malfunction, reported the science officer. All readings are inconsistent. Captain Ji-won felt a chill of recognition. She had seen similar problems during the battle with the dragon on Korath Prime. electronic systems behaving in impossible ways. "The prisoner," she said suddenly. "Where is the prisoner?" "Still in his holding cell, according to security reports," replied Lieutenant Minho. But when security teams checked the detention level, they found empty cells with doors standing wide open. The human who had been raised by a dragon was loose somewhere in the ship. "Red alert," Ji-won announced. "All sections search for the escaped prisoner. He is extremely dangerous." In the computer core, Do-hyun felt the changes he had made beginning to take effect throughout the fleet. Ship systems were failing in cascade patterns. Weapons could not target. Engines could not maneuver properly. Communications were sending contradictory orders. "It is working," Haben said as she watched the status displays. "The fleet is losing coordination." "Now comes the hard part," Do-hyun replied. "I have to face Captain Ji-won directly." "She will have you killed the moment she sees you." "Not if I reach the bridge first," Do-hyun said with grim determination. "The captain needs to understand that her war against innocent people ends today." Stood up from the computer terminal but kept one hand touching it. The connection between his consciousness and the ship's systems remained active. "Can you get me to the bridge without going through security checkpoints?" Haben thought quickly. "The maintenance shafts, they run parallel to the main corridors and connect to every deck. But they are narrow and dangerous." "I have spent 15 years climbing through mountain caves," Do-hyun replied. "I can handle maintenance shafts." They moved through the ship like shadows while chaos erupted around them. Crew members ran past shouting orders and trying to fix systems that kept failing in new and impossible ways. The Stellar Hammer was the most advanced warship in the Council fleet, but it was helpless against an enemy who could think like its own computers. Captain Ji-won stood on her bridge surrounded by displays showing failure after failure. Half her fleet was reporting similar problems. Ships were drifting out of formation because their navigation systems could not agree on where they were supposed to be. "How can one human prisoner cause this much damage?" she demanded. "Maybe he is not just human anymore," Lieutenant Minho suggested quietly. "You said yourself that dragons and humans should never have contact. Maybe prolonged exposure changed him somehow." The captain did not want to consider that possibility. Her entire career was built on the premise that humans were superior to all alien species. The idea that contact with an elder species could improve a human was unthinkable. "Impossible," she stated firmly. "Humans cannot be improved by alien contamination. Find that prisoner and bring him to me. I will prove that he is still just a weak human who got lucky with some computer tricks." Above them in the maintenance shaft, Do-hyun heard every word through the ship's internal communication system. Captain Ji-won still did not understand what she was facing. She thought in terms of human versus alien, when the real truth was much more complex. Terran had not made Do-hyun less human. He had made him more than human. The dragon's gift had awakened potential that was always there waiting to be discovered. "The bridge access is just ahead," Haben whispered as they crawled through the narrow shaft. "But there will be guards at every entrance." "Then I will make my own entrance," Do-hyun replied. He placed his palm against the metal wall of the shaft and extended his consciousness into the ship's structural systems, load-bearing supports, atmospheric processors, gravity generators, all of it connected by the same electronic networks he had learned to control. The ceiling above the bridge command center began to change. Metal panels shifted and reconfigured themselves as if the ship was rebuilding itself from within. An opening appeared directly over Captain Ji-won's command chair. Do-hyun dropped through the opening and landed softly on the bridge deck. Around him, officers reached for weapons, but found their sidearms would not respond to their commands. The ship's computer had locked out all weapon systems on the bridge. "Hello, Captain," Do-hyun said calmly. "We need to talk." Ji-won stared at the young man who had somehow turned her own ship against her. He looked like an ordinary human, but the air around him seemed to shimmer with barely contained energy. You are not human anymore, she said with disgust. That monster corrupted you, with alien influence. Terran taught me to be more human than I was before, Do-Yun replied. He taught me to protect those who cannot protect themselves, like the families you plan to murder on Kepler Station. Those are enemies of the state, terrorists and criminals. Those are refugees, children and families looking for homes after you destroyed their worlds. Do-Hyun stepped closer to the captain's chair. But you will not harm them today. Through the bridge windows, they could see Kepler Station in the distance. Most of the civilian ships had escaped, while the Council fleet struggled with their malfunctioning systems. Only a few transports remained to evacuate the last refugees. You cannot stop an entire battle group, Ji-won said with false confidence. I already have, Do-Hyun replied simply. As if to prove his point, every weapon system in the fleet went completely offline. The massive guns that could destroy planets became silent metal sculptures. The missile launchers sealed themselves shut. Even the fighter craft found their weapons disabled. This is impossible, Lieutenant Minho said in amazement. How can he control our entire fleet? Because I understand something you do not, Do-Hyun explained. Everything is connected. Every computer, every network, every electronic system. Dragons see the patterns that bind the universe together. Now I see them too. Captain Ji-won pulled out a traditional projectile pistol that was not connected to any computer system. You may have disabled our ships, but you are still just flesh and blood. She fired 3 shots at point-blank range. Do-Hyun moved like water flowing around stones. The dragon's gift had enhanced more than just his mind. His reflexes were faster than human normal. His awareness extended beyond normal senses. Before Ji-won could fire again, he was standing beside her. One hand gently took the pistol away while the other helped her sit back down in her command chair. I told you, he said softly. I am not here to hurt anyone. I am here to protect people. The last refugee transport cleared Kepler Station's docking bay and jumped to hyperspace. The evacuation was complete. Thousands of innocent lives had been saved. It is finished, Do-Hyun announced to the bridge crew. Your fleet is free to leave this system, but you will not harm the refugees. The Council will send other fleets, Ji-won said bitterly.